We are coming on the air tonight with breaking news. Diddy going to jail tonight. Superstar Sean Combs denied bail and now pleading not guilty to charges of sex trafficking in New York, as dozens of victims lay out his alleged crimes in disturbing detail, talking about drug-fueled freak-offs that they say basically became days-long abuse sessions. We're live outside the courthouse in New York on why the judge is deciding to keep Diddy behind bars. Also tonight, deadly wildfires in Portugal covering the country in flames. Look at this, what crews are doing tonight to get people safely out of their homes. Plus, a former employee for the company that made the Titan sub is accusing them of doing things on the cheap. The scandal, he's saying, is behind or could be behind that deadly implosion. Then a once-in-a-millennium storm down in the Carolinas. We're live in Charlotte with people trying to pick up the pieces after all of this tonight. And what's really in Kourtney Kardashian's so-called GLP weight loss pill and why people are so fired up about it. One of our doctors explains later in the show. Hey, I'm Hallie, and tonight we are learning in just the last few minutes that a federal judge is now refusing to grant Sean Diddy Combs bail. Instead, he's going straight to jail tonight after Diddy pleaded not guilty to charges of sex trafficking and racketeering. Want to show you some of these brand new court sketches coming into us, like literally in the last 90 seconds. This is Combs in court after prosecutors arrested him at a hotel in Manhattan. It's where he's apparently been living for weeks, according to what a person familiar with the move tells NBC News. All of it a tipping point now in that sprawling federal investigation into the superstar's alleged years of sex crimes dating back to 2009. As we're just getting in some new and deeply disturbing details about the allegations against him and what looks like a massive criminal operation, allegedly. At least 50 victims and witnesses so far. And at the center of it, these hours and days-long sex acts known as, in their words, freak-offs that Combs supposedly orchestrated to abuse his victims.
Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, and he often electronically recorded them.
Prosecutors say Combs punched and kicked his victims to try to keep them under control. He'd also, they say, filled them up with drugs like ketamine and ecstasy for long periods of time, even using incriminating records to try to manipulate his victims. Prosecutors say they discovered this wide range of evidence against Combs in several raids. They found things, they say, like AR-15s, narcotics, more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricants. We should note here that an attorney for Combs says that he, I'm quoting here, will fight this with all of his energy. His team is already planning to appeal the bail ruling, meaning they will be back in court tomorrow, as Combs has, as we mentioned, pleaded not guilty. We've got team coverage, Laura Jarrett standing by with the legal analysis piece of it. But I want to start outside court with Julia Ainsley, because, Julia, this went fairly late into the day. I know you've been at the courthouse as a judge, as we've just learned, is denying this request for bail. Explain why that is and what else we've learned today.
Yeah, that's right. We were in there for about 2 hours as the Justice Department from the Southern District of New York laid out their case, very similar to what you saw in the indictment, saying why he should not be released, because they say that he is a flight risk, he could leave the country, and also that he has a history of obstructing justice. They also pointed to how serious these crimes were, that with previous allegations of sex trafficking like R. Kelly and Jeffrey Epstein, the judges also denied bail in that case. But his defense laid out a very lengthy rebuttal to all of that. We heard them say that this is different from Jeffrey Epstein and R. Kelly because there are no minors being alleged in the indictment here. They also say that these acts were consensual, and they point to victim number one, who's named over and over again, who they say is someone within a 10-year relationship with Combs that was toxic but consensual. They said that this person actually tried to sell this same story as book rights to Combs to try to get it out of the media's eye, but instead, when he refused, then this civil lawsuit came up. But the judge ultimately said that he could not be released because he is a danger, he has a history of substance abuse and anger issues, and she really drilled down on the fact that after those civil allegations came out last November, he talked to multiple women who he knew during that period and who he apparently tried to change their narrative so they wouldn't go forward and continue testifying or being witnesses to some of these acts that were alleged in the civil complaint and then were again put in the indictment today. And so she said in order to keep that from happening and really to end sex trafficking, since that can happen behind closed doors, it was best to keep him detained without bond.
Julia, it is, I think for a lot of folks, they will find this stunning considering that Diddy, right, Sean Combs, has been previously one of the most successful music superstars in the world. Just a year ago, he was handed a key to New York City. Now here we are, after months of this being out in the public, these allegations being made public, his denials. He's potentially facing 15 years to life in prison. What does the timeline look like here?
Well, we understand that tomorrow they'll try to appeal the judge's decision. His defense will do that tomorrow at 3:30. They'll meet again next week for a conference, and then perhaps we'll be looking at a trial early next year. But, Hallie, I have to say, what you said there was also striking. I mean, I watched him today sitting there very humbly in court in a black T-shirt, nodding along with his defense, otherwise just looking very stoic, straight ahead at the judge. It's hard to imagine this is the same man, but the timeline is also staggering. It's one thing to think, oh, that was something that happened a long time ago, but the prosecution today said that these acts, what they're calling sex trafficking and coercion, all continued up until this year, Hallie, and started as far back as 2009. So this was not a brief window.
Julia Ainsley live for us there outside court in New York. Can you just give a sense really quickly, Julia, before I let you go? Is it just a scene there? I mean, I have to imagine, given who Sean Combs is, it is just a crush of cameras, a crush of people.
It is. It's been really crowded today, and there have been people who've been driving by, sometimes screaming, "Free Diddy." Someone else stood up earlier and said Tupac would be ashamed of Diddy. It's been a lot of people, a lot of public interest here. I will say the court wasn't as crowded as I thought, but still nearly full, and also full of his friends and family who came out.
Julia Ainsley, thank you very much. Let me bring in Laura Jarrett here with some more of the legal analysis. Okay, so denied bail in part, apparently, because he is so rich. Basically, because he would have the resources, the judge was concerned, to potentially, I guess, flee. Is that the concern?
Yeah, and that was something that federal prosecutors had mentioned in this lengthy detention memo earlier today, Hallie. They had said he's essentially a flight risk. He has limitless resources. He has this plane. He says he's trying to sell. And they also were concerned that he has tried to suppress witness testimony. They have recorded conversations, at least according to prosecutors, evidence they believe of him trying to squash people's story, offering them money, pressuring them not to come forward, or at least not to come forward with the truth about what has happened. The judge, at least according to those in court, also appeared really bothered by this issue of substance abuse, right? So the prosecutors come in and say, look, Judge, even as early as last night, we found drugs in his hotel room. That's damning for somebody who says they're supposed to be coming forward hat in hand. His whole thing was, I came to New York, I was going to surrender, and they wouldn't let me surrender. And the judge is hearing, oh, lo and behold, there were drugs in the actual hotel room. Obviously, he's going to plead not guilty today, but this is the first step in what is going to be a long road for him. So to have him behind bars right now, so early in the process, this is not a trial that is going to go forward anytime soon, Hallie. We are talking months, maybe even a year or more until this gets to trial.
The legal observers and experts that you're talking to, are they surprised that Diddy tonight, right now, is going behind bars?
No, that indictment is scathing and damning and reads like something out of a horror novel. Now, of course, he is entitled to presumption of innocence, but the prosecutors just laid out statutorily, like chapter and verse, dangerousness, obstruction of justice, flight risk, all of those are things that he would have to rebut, and the judge said he just wasn't able to do it today. Offering up $50 million for someone who has more than $1 billion is all well and good, but the judge just wasn't convinced that was enough.
So prosecutors getting their ducks in a row for this indictment, essentially, does that help explain the gap or the length of time between those raids back in March to where we are now here in September?
So it's hard to know even whether prosecutors are really done here. Every time a prosecutor gets up and says, okay, more to come, this investigation continues. Reading through that indictment today, Hallie, I wondered whether they're going to do a superseding indictment because it reads like some case that has cooperators, right? Like there's so much detail. It would be hard to imagine that they got all of that without anyone cooperating. And so we might actually see more indictments still to come here.
That would be the next shoe to drop. What's the next kind of date on the calendar we should be looking at here?
Yeah, September 24th. Going to be back and forth in court in front of that judge.
Laura Jarrett, thank you very much. Really appreciate that. In just the next couple of hours, to politics now, we're going to hear former President Trump talk directly with voters for the first time since what the FBI calls that second apparent assassination attempt. He's going to be in Michigan just hours after his running mate was there, attacking those who say Mr. Trump has got to tone it down.
To everybody that has been attacking this man and trying to censor this man for going on 10 years, cut it out or you're going to get somebody killed. Don't lecture Donald Trump about softening his rhetoric after two people tried to kill him. It's ridiculous.
To be clear, there's no evidence we've seen so far tying this would-be assassin to any formal motive. It comes as Vice President Harris says she called Mr. Trump today, her political opponent, of course, telling him she believes there's no place for political violence in this country. You've got investigations now ramping up with the House, planning to include this apparent assassination attempt into its investigation of the other one back in July in Pennsylvania. And Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is also going to start his own parallel look into what went down in West Palm Beach. That is where we find Dasha Burns for us tonight. You've got this sort of DeSantis investigation here, and it almost, reading between the lines a bit, sounded like the governor doesn't necessarily trust the feds to do their own investigation here. Is that fair? Are you picking that up from sources as well?
Well, look, Hallie, it's no secret that there has been growing mistrust between the former president, between really Republicans at large, and the FBI, the DOJ. This is something that largely lays on the claims of former President Trump, calling those departments weaponized. And yeah, I think it's a fair reading of what DeSantis is trying to say. But I want you to take a listen to what he said earlier today, and we'll talk on the other side.
They cannot pursue charges to the extent we can. And yes, I do think that there's a lot of concern about how these agencies have operated. And the state of Florida, I mean, you know, for us, all weird shit is the truth.
Yeah, certainly no love lost between DeSantis or Trump and the FBI and the Justice Department. So that does seem to be a motivator for this parallel investigation that the state of Florida is launching here.
On those investigations, you've got senators on both sides saying that agencies like the Secret Service, like Homeland Security, need to be more transparent, need to provide, like, receipts, basically, back up what they're saying with documents. Listen to this.
I think it's tantamount to stonewalling in many respects.
We're going to have to get aggressive. We're going to have to demand that they start providing us, Congress, the information it needs so the American people understand what the truth is.
Where does that go, Dasha?
Well, I mean, this is part of the debate also about whether or not or how to allocate additional resources to the Secret Service at a time when they're realizing they really need to ramp up their protective detail, their responsibilities. That scope, according to officials, has already been expanded since the election really got into full swing. And certainly there's been a reassessment since July 13th and that first assassination attempt against the former president back in July. And you heard the acting director of the Secret Service say, look, we need a paradigm shift here for this agency to go from a reactive sort of approach to a readiness approach, a more proactive approach. But he does feel that resources are stretched thin. So you've got the Secret Service talking about what they need, and then you've got the sort of political sphere looking at this agency as well. And it's been under scrutiny for some time now. So it remains to be seen how this investigation moves forward and whether or not additional funds are given to the Secret Service or if they have to work with what they've got, Hallie.
Dasha Burns, live for us here in West Palm. Thank you very much. To Ohio, where a sheriff there is in some hot water tonight after telling locals to keep a list of homes like the ones you're about to see with Harris campaign signs in their yard. Take a look at this Facebook post from Portage County Sheriff Bruce Zukowski. It's still up on his public page, implying that homes of Harris supporters should be used to house newly arrived migrants. It's happening some 200 miles away. The intense rhetoric around migrants is taking a toll, with schools in Springfield seeing a rollout of more security measures. We told you about the Ohio governor making this change after the town faced dozens of bomb threats at schools and government buildings. All of it coming after comments that former President Trump made at last week's debate when he said migrants were eating the pets of Springfield locals. That has been debunked. Springfield's mayor implied earlier today about what the mayor believes is responsible for the chaos. Watch.
We did not have threats 7 days ago. We did not have these concerns 7 days ago. We'd like those that on the national stage that can bring peace, that could tamper their words and speak truth. That's what Springfield is asking. We need peace. We need help, not hate.
I want to bring in NBC's Kelly O'Donnell, who is following this one for us. And Kelly, the sheriff's Facebook posts, some of these other pieces of it, part of what appears to be conservative attacks on Vice President Harris. Talk us through the campaign strategy here in terms of engaging, deflecting, et cetera.
Well, today, Kamala Harris was able to take some questions at a forum hosted by the National Association of Black Journalists, and she was asked about Springfield. The sheriff's comments, he's from the county that is east of Akron in northeast Ohio, and there is, of course, a lot of Trump support in Ohio. The state has gone for him twice, and this situation brought out in Kamala Harris today perhaps a more impassioned and more emotional response than we have seen on most topics from her when she was pressed on this, talking about the impact of the children in the community who are afraid about what's happened to their schools with these hoax threats being called in and so forth. Here's a portion of what the vice president said as she was addressing those who have brought that attention to Springfield, Ohio.
It's a crying shame. I mean, my heart breaks for this community. When you have that kind of microphone in front of you, you really ought to understand at a very deep level how much your words have meaning.
And in part of her discussion of that, she talked about how for some children it was school picture day when their classes were canceled. And she sort of told the story of how those were special memories for people when they're children, and sort of taking it to the level of the perspective of young children who don't understand all about the politics and all about how their community has become thrust into the national spotlight. And then she turned that to the responsibility of people like her opponent, Donald Trump, and his running mate, Senator Vance, and how they are talking about these issues. And she is saying that there has to be more respect for the community and clear facts about what the situation really is. Hallie?
Kelly O'Donnell live for us there outside the White House. Kel, thank you. Overseas now, we're getting some new details tonight about those deadly explosions across Lebanon, an apparent attack on members of Hezbollah and the old school pagers that they used to communicate. Hurting some 3,000 people, these attacks did, killing at least 9, we've now learned. You're looking at the chaotic aftermath of these explosions here. These Hezbollah-owned pagers, devices, blew up across the country seemingly at the same time, which created a nationwide health emergency. Hezbollah is putting the blame on Israel without any evidence just yet, and we should note the Israelis have not responded to formal requests for comment. There's a lot of questions now about who orchestrated these attacks. You're actually looking at one of these explosions here. How they did it, with government leaders warning people, do not use any handheld devices like phones, like pagers, tablets, etc. Raf Sanchez is following all of this from Tel Aviv. It is sort of stunning to look at here. How is it possible for something this coordinated to even happen in the first place?
Hallie, that's the question being asked all over the Middle East right now. As you said, the Israeli government is refusing to say one way or another whether it had any role in what does appear to be a massive, unprecedented intelligence operation. But I spoke a little earlier to former CIA Director John Brennan. He said it's pretty clear to him that this was an Israeli operation. And he thinks what is most likely here is that Israeli spies somehow got into the supply chain. So Hezbollah ordered these pagers. Israel, at some point in the supply chain, was able to get its hands on them and plant some kind of small explosive into each and every one of these pagers. And you know, Hallie, a pager is small, like this. Yeah. It's tiny. It's a couple of inches. Exactly. And then to somehow remotely detonate them all at the same time. Now, one of the questions folks might be asking is, pagers? 1980s, 1990s technology. Hezbollah has been using pagers because they are convinced that Israel, with its incredibly sophisticated surveillance capabilities, is able to hack into smartphones. So they believed that these pagers were actually the safer way to communicate. And instead, every indication is that these pagers attached to people's belts, in people's pockets, became tiny bombs, as you can see in that supermarket on the left of your screen there, which exploded around 3:30 p.m. all over Lebanon, causing these mass casualties. Hallie?
Raf, I'm interested in part in your conversation with former Director Brennan here and the potential link, although we don't know anything yet, to Israel, because, as we said, Israel has not responded to formal requests for comment. Should we read anything into Israeli silence at this point?
So this is kind of Israel's trademark, Hallie, especially with these high-profile assassinations, covert operations carried out overseas. They tend to kind of let the killing, let the explosions do the talking. They try not to gloat about it because they feel that that is more likely to provoke a response from Hezbollah. Hezbollah is saying it's very clear in its own minds that Israel's responsible. They are saying that they will retaliate. Earlier tonight, Israel's top generals all got together not far from here to plan a defense strategy. And I can tell you, Hallie, here in Israel tonight, there are a lot of people who are marveling at what appears to be the ingenuity of their intelligence services, and at the same time are very, very nervous about what comes next. Hallie?
Raf Sanchez live for us in Tel Aviv. Raf, thank you. Back here at home tonight, the Carolinas are dealing with the aftermath of that story we told you about last night. 1 in a 1,000-year rainstorm that just blasted that whole area, dumping something like 15 inches of rain in just 12 hours along the coast. Let me show you this. Dozens of roads are washed out. Emergency water rescue teams have now been deployed. Several people had to be rescued from flooded cars and homes. And a lot of people are just now getting a chance to go in. Look at this pup. To go in and see, like, OK, how's my house? What's the damage look like? What's the deal? Marissa Parra is there in North Carolina. And I see you standing right in front of it, Marissa, some of what folks are having to deal with.
Hey, Hallie. So I will point out this is Little Sugar Creek, and Little Sugar Creek is pretty tame right now compared to what it looked like yesterday. And so this is more or less the story of the day, is what a difference 24 hours can make. I want to show you some of what we saw on the harder hit part of this state, which was the coast, especially Carolina Beach. Now, Carolina Beach declared a state of emergency because they got over 15 inches of rain in less than 12 hours, Hallie. So some of what you're seeing a combination of rescues, people getting around how they can. Those cars were stranded under feet of water. Some people had to sit on top of their cars that were stalled out, waiting to find another ride home because theirs was, of course, no longer available to them. And then we also had roads that were washed away. This was in Southport in Brunswick County. Highway 17 had hundreds of cars stranded. And so, Hallie, what was interesting, and I'll get more to this on the other side of this, but, you know, this was a storm that caught a lot of people by surprise. They really underestimated this storm. They knew there was going to be rain. They didn't expect this much. Take a listen.
The weather just kept getting worse and worse, and the rain just kept coming. I've never seen it come up this fast.
They kind of just turned Brunswick County into multiple islands.
It didn't look that high. The water did not look that high. You can see the car just completely almost went underwater.
So, Hallie, I will point out this storm was not a hurricane. It actually never even developed enough to become any type of tropical storm. It didn't even have a formal name like we've heard before, right? But this is an example of what we all have to remember is it doesn't take a named storm for any type of storm to do severe damage like we're seeing in the coastal part of the Carolinas.
What is the expectation for storms? Because it's so interesting about this storm, as you've talked about, as we talked about with Bill Cairns last night, didn't have a name. It wasn't like one of the ones that people hear about on the news for like days and days in advance. What is the expectation for what the rest of this hurricane season looks like? Do we know?
Well, what I will say is that no one should be letting their guard down. I'll point out that Hurricane Ian in 2022 hit at the start of October. Hurricane season lasts through November 30th. And so it's really important. I think, you know, people hear fall is coming. They don't associate fall with hurricanes, but hurricanes can absolutely still develop, especially as we see those warmer waters, warmer and times of the year that we typically haven't seen them as warm as they are. So this is something that I think we're going to talk. I want to talk to you a little bit more about this actually in the next hour, Hallie, because I was talking to our climate team about if there's a climate connection, and stay tuned on that one because I learned some new information I'm excited to share with you.
Well, that's a heck of a tease. We will get to that in the next hour, Marissa Parra. Thank you so much. Stand by. I know you will. We've got other news to get to, so let me take folks to it, because right now we are just hours away from an answer to a question that economists have been wondering about. If you're like super into economy news, maybe you're wondering about it. Either way, it's kind of the drama of the moment for the Fed. If a rate cut is coming, how big will it be? The Fed is meeting right now to finalize their decision ahead of the announcement that's expected tomorrow. And why does this matter? Because it could make it a lot cheaper to borrow money on everything from new mortgages to new auto loans to credit cards. This whole thing, the whole discussion, any potential rate cut would be in pursuit of this big goal that the Fed has, a so-called soft landing for the economy, where they can tamp down high inflation without driving the country into a recession. That is tricky business, right? But that is the business that the Fed is in. The economy is kind of signaling, hey, maybe we're ready for a rate cut. Inflation is now at the lowest it's been since it started to spike back in 2021. Gas prices, good sign there. They're down something like 17% over the last year. Christine Romans is joining us now. Christine, here's what of the many millions of things I love about you, here's one of them. That you put it into normal human person terms, right? Because I think people want to know, a Fed talk, great, love it. What does it mean for my money if they do end up cutting rates? What are the practical implications of this?
Yeah, the high drama, what happens at that big stone building that you were showing matters to the kitchen table for millions of Americans. And here's why. A really important shift in the Fed's stance here. It has kept interest rates at 20-something year highs for months and months and months now. When it cuts those rates, it's going to further drive down mortgage rates. It will begin, it won't happen right away, but eventually you'll see credit card interest rates and car loan interest rates start to decline. So that's really important for anybody who borrows money. It's also important for companies that borrow money. It gives them more breathing space maybe to hire and invest in other places. So lowering interest rates here in an economy that is still solid, that's something that hopefully will be good news for everyone.
So what is the expectation for what they will do? Like, is it pretty baked in? They're probably going to cut. Could Jay Powell come out and surprise us all and say we're not? Like, what do you think?
You know, he's not a big fan of surprises, I'm going to be honest. But there are a lot of signals in the market that they would like to see a 50 basis point. You know, here's the thing, though. You usually only go big with 50 if something really bad is happening, right? A terrorist attack, a recession, you know, a COVID wave, a financial crisis. So it would be really out of the ordinary to do 50. But given how much they have hiked these rates and kept them up here for so long, you know, maybe that's in the cards. Okay. I haven't really seen such a toss-up in a really long time. 25 basis points would be kind of on par for Jay Powell. No big surprises. Maybe he has a really what they call dovish statement saying we're going to keep cutting, and that'll be make everybody happy. But whatever happens, there'll be a rate cut tomorrow.
And it's going to be fascinating, and you're going to be all over it. And it's also all happening, not just big news for like kitchen tables and the big stone building and everything else, but also for the other building, you know, that's down there on Pennsylvania Avenue, and that is the White House. Yeah. Yeah, you know, there is a political backdrop to this. And as I have you here, as we talk about the economy, I was so fascinated to see former President Trump today posting online that he would like to get SALT back, right? This is the state and local tax deduction. It can cut back how much federal income tax you owe. I happen to be old enough to remember because I lived it when I covered the White House, when it was Donald Trump himself as president who implemented, in fact, that cap on SALT. It would be a reversal if he now backs this position, as he says he does. Christine, what are the political and realistic implications of this?
Well, it's interesting. He's heading to Nassau, New York tomorrow for a rally. So where is the place where people would benefit really the most from putting the SALT back? It would be places like New York State, Connecticut, high-tax blue states where maybe Donald Trump is trying to peel off some votes. It would also add to the deficit, and it would, of course, take Congress to do it. So it's a big fight. But a reversal that is getting a lot of attention in some of these big blue states where people really saw their taxes go up with the president's tax cuts because they got rid of that SALT deduction or capped it at $10,000.
That's right. Christine Romans, thank you. Appreciate you. We'll talk tomorrow. I know. Consider yourself booked for the show, let me tell you.
That's a hard booking.
Coming up here on the show. Thanks, Christine. Some pretty wild images out of Portugal. Very scary images. Look at this. Wildfires there turning deadly. We're going to take you inside the fight to get them under control. Plus, bombshell testimony painting a very scary picture of the doomed Titan submersible mission. The too late red flags we're just now learning about. Some bombshell testimony tonight in an ongoing hearing into OceanGate, with a former employee saying the company's CEO ignored safety concerns and rushed the production of the doomed Titan sub. Remember the one that imploded on its way to see the wreck of the Titanic? This former worker says that the boss flew off the handle when questioned. All of this is coming out on the second day of a huge Coast Guard hearing on that sub's implosion. Deadly, of course, killing 5 people, including the CEO, Stockton Rush. I want you to listen to this moment, right? So this is the employee talking about what happened after Rush got a submersible stuck in a wreck on a dive years earlier and then refused to let him take control. Listen to this.
Eventually, it took one of the paying clients to turn round. She shouted at Stockton to give me the effing controller. He reached round behind him. I had my head up inside the tower, so I'm still looking at the wreck, and he clattered it off the right side of my head. And I picked it up, repaired it, and had us out 10, 15 minutes.
Tom Costello is joining us now. That is one of like multiple moments that I think would make your jaw drop in this hearing today.
Yeah.
And I understand this person eventually went on to be kind of a whistleblower against OceanGate, right?
His name is David Lockridge. He is the former operations manager at OceanGate. You can tell from the accent, he is quite Scottish. He was hired to be an expert, a submersible expert for OceanGate. But he started saying, listen, this is not ready for prime time. This submersible, the skin could easily fracture and cause the whole thing to implode. He said it is dangerous. Other engineers were saying this is dangerous. He said he personally wouldn't get in the submersible. When he tried to flag it to Stockton Rush, they fired him. And then he went to OSHA and he said, listen, I've got a serious concern here. I've just been fired, but I want to do a whistleblower complaint here. He said, but OSHA never followed up. And had they followed up, he said, they might have saved some lives. But here's David Lockridge talking about what happened when he went to OSHA, and then he got some threatening letters from OceanGate.
They were basically demanding that I pay them money. They state that if I don't, they will contact previous employers, ex-spouses. OceanGate will contact US Immigration. Fraud, theft, everything's in this.
Yeah, so he's reading there from what he claims are threatening letters from OceanGate, and he says, boy, if only they'd listen, if only OceanGate had listened, if only OSHA had listened, maybe lives would have been saved.
He also describes stuff as being done on the cheap, kind of MacGyvered, if you will.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, and they showed photos which are just astonishing here because he said, listen, you know, on the inside, what are you looking at?
Wait, what are we looking at here?
Pieces that came from Home Depot.
Wow.
Quite literally for the submersible that they're charging people $250,000 to go down into the ocean on. Are you kidding me? And literally, there's a plastic tub from Home Depot. They've got some sort of a bladder that they were also using as an inflatable to help give ballast when necessary to come back up again. They got huge pipes that were used to literally drop weight. This is not a high quality, high engineering type of environment whatsoever.
So there's this hearing. There's some of the lawsuits, of course, that have been filed against OceanGate. But OceanGate doesn't really exist anymore, right? I mean, it kind of dissolved, I guess, after this implosion. I assume is there a lawyer or who is responding to sort of refute any of this, or is nobody responding?
Nobody's really refuting. OceanGate does have a lawyer there. It's not at all clear what entity still exists, right? Because they were pretty much wiped out. The CEO's gone, wiped out with this disaster. Maybe they've got some money left in the bank, and that's why the attorney's there. We really don't know.
Okay. Tom Costello, what's next on this? I mean, this is going to go on for, we think, 2 weeks?
Another 10 days or so. Tomorrow is an off day. They'll be back at it again on Thursday. Lots of engineers, lots of Coast Guard investigators and officers, and a lot of expertise being brought to the fore on this.
All right, Tom Costello, we'll see you back here, by the way, tomorrow night. I know you're sitting in on the show. Thank you very much in advance for
Looking
doing that.
forward to it.
Appreciate it. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, Russia's president ordering the country's army to get about 200,000 troops bigger, 1.5 million servicemen in all. That would make it the second biggest army in the world after China's. The Kremlin says this move is a result, they say, of growing threats on Russia's western borders. Number 2, the Miami Dolphins putting its quarterback on the injured reserve list. We're talking, of course, about Tua Tagovailoa, who's going to miss at least 4 games. Remember, he's been in the news big time. He's recovering from that concussion he got during a game against Buffalo last week. Number 3, the NYPD says it cannot find the knife at the center of a chaotic subway shooting in Brooklyn. Police shot at a man who allegedly did not pay the fare. After they say he charged at officers with that knife, NYPD opened fire. They hit the suspect, 2 innocent bystanders, and a police officer. Officials are now looking for somebody else who they think may have swiped the suspect's knife from the scene. Number 4, wild scene out of a debate for mayor of Sao Paulo, Brazil. Look at this. One candidate, a TV presenter, picks up a chair. Did you catch that? Chucks it at the other one. Look at this. Who's a far-right influencer. It all apparently happened after the influencer said the presenter was not man enough to hit him. Okay, the presenter got expelled from the debate. The victim got a bruised rib, according to his spokesperson. Number 5, air quality warning now out for parts of Texas today after that big pipeline fire we told you about. It is still burning, but it's expected to go out by itself eventually. Officials say they've now got a better sense of what started the fire, that it happened after a car drove through a fence and hit a valve on the pipeline. That's what triggered the explosion. Tonight, at least 7 people are dead and more than 50 hurt as wildfires burn across Portugal. The sky there looking like it could be Mars. Look at this. Firefighters are battling dozens of fires across the country, and it's the smoke, everything else, that's making the sky look that way. The wildfires have destroyed dozens of homes and have forced people to evacuate. Now you've got other countries in Europe stepping in to help. Here's Josh Letterman.
Out-of-control flames sweeping across Portugal, whipped up by intense winds and scorching heat, engulfing tens of thousands of acres and turning the sky an eerie red. Authorities saying today that at least 7 people are dead, including a number of firefighters, among the roughly 5,000 risking their lives to battle the blazes. Dozens of separate fires raging at once, some seen here from satellites in space. This time-lapse video from Madeira showing how quickly the flames grew, continuing to metastasize throughout the night and sending smoke billowing across the mountains as the sun came up the next morning.
The wind is strong, especially in the mountains, and this is a build-up, of course, of many situations, very parameters that combine together and create a cocktail of dangerous conditions.
It's just the latest wildfire crisis to hit Europe this summer as global warming helped spur flames in Greece and Albania. Portugal now asking its neighbors for help. France, Italy, and Greece all sending firefighting planes and other resources. And water bombers brought in from Spain, trying to soak the blaze into submission. But it's not enough, as locals work hard too. I have no strength left, this woman says. The crisis coming as other parts of Europe are drowning in dramatic flooding following intense rainfall from Storm Boris, killing at least 22 people. Soaking places like Hungary, Poland, and the Czech Republic, with more rain still on the way.
Josh is joining us now. Okay, so that rain hopefully will help, right?
Well, that is the hope. There is some rain forecast for the next few days, not as much as firefighters would like. The good news is they do anticipate the winds may die down a bit tomorrow. But notwithstanding all of that, there are announcements now coming from the national government. They are extending the fire alert until Thursday. That means that, among other things, farmers will not be allowed to use heavy machinery to harvest their crops because of the risk it could create sparks that would set even more fires. And Hallie, this is really coming at the tail end of what is normally the firefighting, the wildfire season in Europe. This has actually been a more mild season than most, but clearly what's happening in Portugal is the exception. Hallie?
Yeah. Josh Letterman, thank you very much. Coming up later in the show, new dramatic video showing folks in Atlanta dropping in to commit a robbery, how they pulled it off, and hear why Miley Cyrus is being accused of ripping off Bruno Mars for one of her biggest hits. We're breaking down the latest music legal beef next. One of the world's biggest pop stars is now facing a new lawsuit accusing her of stealing her award-winning song from another one of the world's biggest pop stars. We're talking about Miley Cyrus and Bruno Mars. Miley's song Flowers and Bruno's song When I Was Your Man. I know you know them both. I want you to listen to both of them. You be the judge. Listen to this.
I can buy myself flowers, write my name in the sand. I should have bought you flowers and held your hand.
Okay. To be clear, so very interesting, right? I don't know. You tell me what you think. But to be clear, it's not Bruno Mars suing Miley. It's actually the company he sold his song to that is now suing Miley Cyrus. And let us be clear here. Flowers is like one of the biggest songs ever. We're talking 2 Grammys, including Record of the Year. 8 weeks on top of the Billboard Hot 100. Nearly 3 billion streams. It was the best-selling single of last year. I know you've heard it. Court documents we're getting that allege, I want to read them to you, quote, any fan of Bruno Mars knows Miley's song did not achieve all that success on its own. We are out to reps from both Miley and Bruno. We have not heard back. Yasmin Vasugia is all over this. This has happened. This is not the first time that an artist or a company has sued another artist or a company about a song. But walk us through the specifics here. Again, not Bruno Mars, but the company he sold the song to. What do they say Miley Cyrus did? How do they say she stole it, just heard it and did it, or what? How much do they want?
By the way, I'd like to be introduced now as Yasmin Vasugia, NBC News Now top music correspondent from here on out after doing this segment, Hallie. And what I have now learned about flowers.
Tell me everything.
What's your bad? I am living out my dreams as an MTV VJ here. So it's actually Tempo Music Investments, by the way. That is the company that bought a share of Bruno Mars's kind of catalog of music, which is, by the way, something that is fairly common, right? It's a really lucrative thing to do, to sell your catalog of music. We're looking at numbers like 300, 400, 500, $500 million in which folks like Bruno Mars will sell their catalogs of music. They're alleging essentially that Miley Cyrus, quote unquote, intentionally copied Bruno Mars's work. Let me read for you some more from the court documents, in addition, Hal, to what you read as well, saying undeniable, based on the combination number of similarities between the two recordings, that Flowers would not exist, going so far as to say it would not exist without When I Was Your Man. I mean, these are the sorts of things, Hal, as I was kind of looking into this reporting, that has happened quite often between artists, especially artists that have sold off their catalogs and or maybe the estates of now deceased artists, happening with current artists as well. But nonetheless, I mean, it's happened before and it's happening now, and it's major.
But it's happened to Miley before,
it has.
right?
Yeah, fourth time this has happened. By the way, 2 times in 2018, once in 2022. In 2018, by the way, it was Michael May saying her song We Can't Stop was similar to lyrics from a 1988 track of his that was called We Run Things. Settled out of court. Look at that, $300 million. There was a suit that was dropped in 2018 as well. From the song 23, in which she was a collaborator on. And then in 2022 as well, a photo that she posted saying she didn't own the rights to that photo. The photographer said that. That was also settled as well. So this is the 4th time in which this has actually happened to Miley Cyrus.
There's some collateral damage here, too, right? Because Bruno Mars is not suing anybody here. But he, of course, he is the face of his own song. And it shines this sort of interesting light on the risks that stars can take when they sell their catalogs, because in some ways they lose control of their own art, in a way.
That's exactly right. They lose control. But again, it's incredibly lucrative. It happens all the time. Take a look at some of the biggest stars that have sold out their catalogs: Bruce Springsteen, Paul Simon, and Justin Bieber. It happens all the time. But again, it is one of the big risks that they are running in doing that.
Yasmin Vasugian, our, what did you say? Our
top
chief
music news
MTV, VMA, VJ, correspondent, all of it. Okay. Appreciate you. Thanks, Yas.
Thanks, Hal.
NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day. And because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. At our Southern Bureau, a Florida sheriff releasing a mugshot and a perp walk of an 11-year-old charged with threatening a mass shooting. We are not showing his face or naming him because he's a minor. Officials say this boy collected weapons, some fake, some real, and a written list of people. He allegedly told deputies the threat was a joke. The sheriff says he will do the same thing to other kids arrested for similar threats, to effectively publicly try to shame them and their parents. Also out of our Southern Bureau, new video out of the Atlanta Police Department showing a pretty dramatic robbery. Look at this. The suspects apparently dropped in through the ceiling. You see them. They go down in there like the tiles are falling. This is a cash checking business. Officials say they used power tools to cut a hole in the roof. That's how they got in, and then allegedly stole more than $150,000. Police are still looking for them. Out of our Midwest Bureau, Michael Jordan's suburban Chicago mansion is finally getting sold. It is finally under contract after about a decade of being on the market. That is a long time. 56,000 square feet. That's not small. It was listed for about $15 million. We don't know the final price, if it was more than that, less than that, whatever. The house has a basketball gym, Natch, infinity pool, tennis court, cigar room, 19 bathrooms, and the property taxes alone are about $150,000 a year. Still to come. Instagram says it's rolling out some new features to protect its youngest users. Question is, can a teen who's good at tech get around it all? Instagram tonight rolling out a whole new approach to accounts for teenagers after years of more and more pressure to try to make Insta safer for teens. Over the next few weeks, here's the deal. Here's what's changing. Accounts of people younger than 18 will automatically be shifted to private. It means that these people are going to have to approve followers, they're going to have restrictions on screen time, and their parents are going to be allowed to see who they're messaging. Julia Borston has more. Walk us through the new features, but importantly, if you take a step like sort of in the process before that, how is Instagram going to know if a teenager types in, 16 or 21?
Well, look, this will be much easier for Instagram to do this rollout with teens who admit they're teens, who admit they're under 18 years old and are honest about their age. But they are going to be using AI features to try to identify teens who may have lied about their age and put in an adult birth date. So they could ask for ID or things like that to verify whether these teens are actually adults or whether they're just lying. But the idea here is that they want to make these default settings for teens. So this includes automatic protections, private accounts. What they're going to be doing is shifting all of these teen accounts to private. You have to opt to make them public. They're filtering out inappropriate language and suggestive content. And they are also putting limits on screen time. So between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., you won't be getting alerts if you are a teen. Now, Instagram says they've developed all of these features for their Instagram teen accounts after working with parents and various organizations to make sure they're doing what's best for teens and also what parents want.
It's also, it's not like this pressure from parents groups, from people here I am on Capitol Hill is brand new, right? There have been these calls to make social media safer for teenagers online for years. Can you talk through the timing piece of this? Why is Meta rolling this out now?
Well, it seems like Meta has definitely been working on this for a while, and they've certainly invested quite a bit in trying to figure out what these features should be. But there is no doubt, Hallie, that the heat is turning up on Instagram and other social media platforms. There's a bill that's been working its way through Congress that's called the COSA bill. This is the Kids Online Safety Act, and it's been working its way through. And there's a question of whether it'll ever get approved, but a bipartisan support for this bill. And then the Surgeon General just issued a call to label social media as dangerous, kind of like a cigarette label, but for social media. And then there's support by over 40 different state attorneys general for that move. Hallie.
Julia Borston over at NBC. Julia, great to have you on. Thank you very much. We are coming on the air with breaking news tonight. Diddy in jail as we speak. Apparently, superstar Sean Combs denied bail, pleading not guilty to charges of sex trafficking in New York as dozens of victims lay out his alleged crimes in disturbing detail. Talking about drug-fueled freak-offs that they say basically became days-long abuse sessions. We'll take you live outside court in New York. We're also live in Michigan, where former President Trump will talk with voters for the first time after that second attempt on his life, as the FBI describes it. What our team's hearing from the man who golfed with him when it was happening, and how this is all playing into the race for the White House. Then new details on those deadly explosions in Lebanon. Thousands hurt, with Hezbollah pointing the finger at Israel for basically causing, they claim, exploding pagers. The big questions about what went down. Plus, a former employee for the company that made the Titan submersible says the company's CEO actually got stuck in a wreck years before that deadly implosion claimed his life. The scandal, he's now saying, could be under the whole thing. And did Miley Cyrus rip off a Bruno Mars song for one of her biggest hits? The company that owns that song says yes. We're going to let you be the judge later in the show. Hey there, I'm Hallie, and tonight we are just learning a federal judge is now refusing to grant Diddy bail, sending Sean Combs straight to jail after he pleaded not guilty to charges for sex trafficking and racketeering. I want to show you some of these brand new court sketches just into us. So this is Combs in court. This is just in the last maybe 65 minutes, not even. This is after prosecutors arrested Diddy at a hotel in Manhattan. A person familiar with his living situation says he's apparently been basically living there for weeks. All of it right now, a tipping point in the sprawling federal investigation into Combs' alleged years of sex crimes dating back to 2009, dating back years. We're just getting in some new and deeply disturbing details about the allegations against him in what looks like a massive criminal operation, according to prosecutors, with at least 50 victims and witnesses so far. At the center of it, These hours and days-long sex acts Combs supposedly orchestrated to abuse his victims.
Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, and he often electronically recorded them.
Prosecutors say Combs punched and kicked his victims to keep them in control. They say he'd also give them drugs like ketamine and ecstasy for long periods of time, and even use incriminating recordings to try to manipulate his victims. Prosecutors say they discovered a whole bunch of what they describe as evidence against Combs in several raids, like AR-15s, narcotics, more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricants. Got a note here. An attorney for Combs says he, and I'm quoting here, he is going to fight this with all of his energy. His team is already planning to appeal the bail ruling, meaning they're going to be back in court tomorrow as Combs is pleading not guilty. We've got team coverage tonight. Laura Jarrett's standing by with the legal analysis, but I want to start with Chloe Malas outside court in New York City. And to say that this has been sort of a stunning 22 hours, if you go back to when that arrest happened here, I think is probably fitting here, given the allegations against Combs, given his standing, or at least his former standing in the music world. Give us a sense of what it was like at court today, what we're hearing, and what happens next.
Hallie, the arraignment took over 2 hours because part of that, well, a major part of that hearing today had to do with whether or not the judge was going to grant him bail. His team saying that he was going to put up $50 million, which included a house of his in Florida that was worth $48 million that they were putting up as collateral. I was sitting just a few feet away from him. This is a man that I have sat down with and I have interviewed before when I was working at CNN. And this is somebody that was revered. And it sounds like, based on what I've read in this indictment today, that he was also very feared. But this is somebody that paved the way in the music industry for so many different individuals that have now gone on to become Grammy winners and at the top of their career. But this is someone that also received billionaire status. You talk about the fact, Hallie, that he received a key to New York City. This is a man that came from very humble beginnings. His father died when he was 2 years old. He worked his way up. He lived in Harlem, and he did great things in the music industry. But when you look at this indictment, it sounds like he ruled with fear, that he abused his power. Now, all of this Sean Diddy Combs is denying, but he allegedly was physically and sexually abusive to individuals in his life for decades, and that he also was a part of a RICO enterprise, and that this billion-dollar business that he had, which was fashion and a TV company and all of these different things, even a liquor company that he eventually sold to Diageo and made hundreds of millions of dollars. That made him a very wealthy man, Hallie, that he was able to hide this behavior for so long because of his businesses and the people around him that helped him do that.
The arrest itself was also surprising because prosecutors say they found drugs in his hotel room. Explain why that comes into the conversation here.
So the prosecutors got up there and they said that you would think that Combs, who voluntarily came to New York just a few weeks ago and was living in this hotel to cooperate with this federal investigation, because according to his attorney, Mark Agnifilo, they knew that there was an indictment coming. NBC News, we were first to report over the summer that a grand jury was hearing evidence. So he knew that something was going on. And we know that he had been told that he was a target, a subject of a federal investigation. Well, when they went to get him yesterday in the lobby of the hotel, a source familiar telling me that not only was he caught off guard, we learned today in court, Hallie, that he had drugs, some sort of a pink powdered substance that looked like ecstasy in his hotel room. Now, we don't know who that belonged to. They're still doing testing on that substance. But again, the government was saying, see, even when he tries to do the right thing, he still can't get there, and that's why he needs to be behind bars. And they're also worried about witness tampering, that he's going to get to individuals and bully them and convince them or pay them off and try to keep them from being a part of an upcoming trial.
Chloe, prosecutors laid out a damning indictment against Combs, who has pleaded not guilty. As we said, his legal team is going to be appealing his bail. We're going to get into that with Laura in just a second here. It is clear that with the resources that Combs has, there is going to be likely a very protracted court fight over all of this. Fair?
I mean, that's fair. I mean, his entire side of the courtroom, Hallie, was packed with people that looked like music executives. It also looked like several members of his family. 3 of his sons were there. This is a man that has an enormous amount of wealth at his fingertips. But again, tonight, he's behind bars. Tomorrow, seems very unlikely that that judge is going to change her mind. And he will likely sit behind bars until he goes to trial. I listened to the government lay out their case today and compare him to R. Kelly, compare him to Steve Raniere, compare him to Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, this is a major fall from grace from somebody that was a pioneer in the music industry.
Chloe Malas, live for us there in New York City. Chloe, thank you. So that tees us up for this discussion with Laura Jarrett for some of the legal analysis. Let me take that into a couple points here. You heard Chloe talk about this bail appeal, basically, right? This denial of bail appeal that's going to happen tomorrow. Sean Combs is spending tonight in jail. Is there a chance he gets out tomorrow? His team, the prosecutors made the case. He's got a ton of money. He's got this plane, et cetera. What could the defense say tomorrow that was not effective today?
It's going to be a tough road for them. They're going to go in front of Judge Carter, an Obama appointee, tomorrow at 3:30 to make their case for why the magistrate judge, who usually just does the arraignments and does sort of those simple administrative tasks, got it wrong. But she was obviously concerned today about his anger issues. She's concerned about the substance abuse. She's concerned about witness intimidation. And the prosecutors sort of got their first crack at teeing this case up, as Chloe laid it out, in the court of public opinion, too, Hallie. They know all the eyes on this, and you heard it from both the prosecution and defense certainly laying out their case. And so the defense is going to try to say, look, he has the money. He can use his home as collateral. He's trying to sell off his plane. But given all the resources at his disposal and given what he's facing, 15 years to life in prison, the prosecution's going to say he has everything, every incentive to try to flee here.
You also heard Chloe talk about the prosecution comparing this case to R. Kelly, comparing it to Jeffrey Epstein. What else can you tell us on that front?
Yeah, it's interesting. The prosecutors obviously making those comparisons to say, look, those people were behind bars, detained pretrial as well. The defense is saying those were different situations, those were children. But remember, the prosecutors don't have to lay out all the evidence that they have in this indictment. This is just the probable cause to get him arrested, get him into court. The prosecutors can come forward with another indictment with more evidence. They can come forward with a superseding indictment. We've seen that in other cases like this. So I think this is sort of the first tranche, the first step in what's going to be a lengthy process.
Laura Jarrett, thank you very much. Glad to have you with us tonight. To politics now, because in just under an hour, we're going to hear former President Trump talk directly to voters, right, in person at a rally for the first time since what the FBI calls that second apparent assassination attempt. He'll be in Michigan just hours after his running mate was there, going after those who say Mr. Trump has got to tone it down. Watch.
To everybody that has been attacking this man and trying to censor this man for going on 10 years, cut it out or you're going to get somebody killed. Don't lecture Donald Trump about softening his rhetoric after 2 people tried to kill him. It's ridiculous.
To be clear here, there is no evidence at this point tying this suspect to any kind of official motive at this point. With all of this coming as Vice President Harris says she called Mr. Trump today, telling him there's no place for political violence in this country. You've got investigations ramping up, obviously the FBI, but also on the political front, the House is now planning to include this apparent assassination attempt in its investigation into the other one in Pennsylvania back in July. And you've got Florida Governor Ron DeSantis set to start his own parallel look into what went down here. Garrett Haake is traveling with the former president. He is in Flint, Michigan tonight. And Garrett, let me start there, teeing up to what's going to happen behind you there. We've heard from former President Trump in that crypto X Spaces event situation. He's done a couple of print/digital interviews here. This is going to be his first rally. Give us a sense of expectation on sort of tone, discussion that you're anticipating for tonight. And I don't know if you've had a chance to talk with people there, but what they're saying about it.
Yeah, Hallie, this is billed as a town hall event here tonight, although Trump town halls are a bit different from other candidates in that they're almost as indistinguishable from rallies. You see the 2 chairs behind me. Trump will be questioned by Sarah Huckabee Sanders, his former press secretary.
It's not a news interview.
It's
not a news town hall. It's a political town hall by a friendly questioner here.
No, but I bring that up to say only that if the campaign as an organization wants him to address this more fulsomely, they have a little bit more of an ability to control that possibility than they do with a typical Trump speech, because they'll have someone on stage who can force the issue and ask him about it directly. J.D. Vance's comments today make it pretty clear that the campaign sees violence or potential violence against Trump and blaming it on Democratic rhetoric as a winning issue. So I suspect you'll see it brought up today. Trump's social media posts have been, sort of angry in the sort of, sliding scale of Trump anger, not overwhelmingly so. But his interviews have been a little bit more circumspect, where we know he's, praised the Secret Service agents who've protected him and been a little bit fainter even in his condemnation of the agency than we've heard in the past. I interviewed last night a close friend of his who was golfing with him, and I asked him about whether he even kind of feels safe going forward with the Secret Service protecting him. This is what I was told.
He has a lot of faith in them. Does he think that it's possible that along the way mistakes could have been made? Well, I mean, yes, mistakes could have been made. And in this case, lives could be lost because of such, because of a mistake. But I think he has a lot of faith in this detail, his agent in charge there.
Hallie, the mood among attendees here is a little bit more aggressive about this. On the way in, I noted several people wearing what appear to be new Trump merch with a picture of the former president with two middle fingers raised and the lines, "You liberals can't shoot for expletive" underneath them. That is the MAGA world reaction to what we've seen over the last few days.
Garrett Haig, live for us there in Flint, Michigan tonight. Garrett, thank you very much. Glad to have you there. Stick it to Ohio, where a sheriff there is in some hot water after telling locals to keep a list of homes with Harris campaign signs in their yard, like these. I want to show you a Facebook post from Portage County Sheriff Bruce Zakowski. It's still up there on his public page, implying that the homes of Harris supporters should be used to house newly arrived migrants. It's happening is just about 200 miles away. The intense rhetoric around migrants is taking a toll, with schools in Springfield seeing a rollout of new security moves, heightened measures there. We told you about the Ohio governor making this change after the town faced dozens of bomb threats at schools and government buildings. All of it coming after comments former President Trump made at last week's debate when he put Springfield, Ohio in the spotlight, claiming migrants were eating the pets of Springfield locals, a debunked claim. Here's what the Springfield mayor said earlier today.
We did not have threats 7 days ago. We did not have these concerns 7 days ago. We'd like those that on the national stage that can bring peace, that could tamper their words and speak truth. That's what Springfield is asking. We need peace. We need help, not hate.
NBC's Kelly O'Donnell is joining us now. And so, Kelly, I have to tell you, in my conversations with a source close to the Trump campaign, the discussion was around how the focus on Springfield actually did something that they want to do, which is highlight the issue of immigration. They see this as a political vulnerability for Vice President Kamala Harris and want to put her essentially on the back foot on this front. Talk us through that dynamic and the response here from the Harris-Walz campaign.
It's hard to let it go, I know. Living in that world, covering the sitting president and the campaign, it's hard to lose the Biden-Harris combo. The immigration issue is critical for Trump's campaign and for many Republicans, and broadly many voters are concerned about it. And there are legitimate questions and issues that a community like Springfield, Ohio is experiencing when you have an influx of what we are told are legal immigrants. They happen in many cases to come from the Haitian community, and that is not unlike other immigration in the swings of our nation's history, where people are drawn to a similar community where they have a sense of language and knowing people and so forth, there to do work that is in demand. But part of what comes with an influx into a community are questions about the cost of housing and health care and various things that the Trump campaign and supporters of the former president would like a much brighter focus. It has devolved in many ways to some of the baseless claims about pets and all these other things that have taken it off into some strange directions. Today, Kamala Harris at a forum for the National Association of Black Journalists was asked about Springfield and the impact of rhetoric about immigration, demonizing immigrants, and some of the things that have been put on supporters of former President Trump. And she said, in quite emotional terms, she reflected on what the impact has been on children and on people who have been affected with schools being closed and the community experiencing a lot of distress. And she said those in power have to do better. Here's part of what she said.
It's a crying shame. I mean, my heart breaks for this community. When you have that kind of microphone in front of you, you really ought to understand at a very deep level how much your words have meaning.
And so while J.D. Vance would like the focus to be on the impact on the community and changes there and questions about immigration that they would like Kamala Harris to answer, she focused on those who are in some ways vulnerable, fearful about their safety, concerned about their children not being able to be in school due to these threats. So it really gets all the different emotions and all of the different fear points that are a part of the national conversation and politics. Legitimate issues to debate and discuss on immigration, and at the same time, it has certainly taken a cultural life of its own and become a real flashpoint. Hallie?
Kelly O'Donnell, thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. We're getting some new details tonight overseas now about the deadly explosions of pagers. Yeah, like the stuff people used in 1980s, pagers in Lebanon, which was an apparent attack on Hezbollah. I want to show you some of the aftermath here of what happened. These Hezbollah-owned devices, these pagers, blew up all across the country in Lebanon, seemingly at the same time. That created a nationwide health emergency. Hezbollah is pinning the blame on Israel without any evidence just yet. And we should note Israel has not responded to requests for comment, with lots of questions about who orchestrated these attacks. You're looking at one of the explosions right here. You can see everybody kind of standing around, and then there it goes. The pager basically blows up. Government leaders are now warning people not to use any kinds of devices like phones, pagers, tablets, etc. Raf Sanchez is following all of this for us from Tel Aviv tonight. It is sort of stunning to look at here. How is it possible for something this coordinated to even happen in the first place?
Hallie, that's the question being asked all over the Middle East right now. As you said, the Israeli government is refusing to say one way or another whether it had any role in what does appear to be a massive, unprecedented intelligence operation. But I spoke a little earlier to former CIA Director John Brennan. He said it's pretty clear to him that this was an Israeli operation. And he thinks what is most likely here is that Israeli spies somehow got into the supply chain. So Hezbollah ordered these pagers. Israel, at some point in the supply chain, was able to get its hands on them and plant some kind of small explosive into each and every one of these pagers. And you know, Hallie, a pager is
small,
like this.
yeah.
It's tiny. It's a couple of inches. Exactly. And then to somehow remotely detonate them all at the same time. Now, one of the questions folks might be asking is, pagers? 1980s, 1990s technology. Hezbollah has been using pagers because they are convinced that Israel, with its incredibly sophisticated surveillance capabilities, is able to hack into smartphones. So they believed that these pagers were actually the safer way to communicate. And instead, every indication is that these pagers attached to people's belts, in people's pockets, became tiny bombs, as you can see in that supermarket on the left of your screen there, which exploded around 3:30 p.m. all over Lebanon, causing these mass casualties. Hallie?
Raf, I'm interested in part in your conversation with former Director Brennan here and the potential link, although we don't know anything yet, to Israel, because, as we said, Israel has not responded to a formal request for comment. Should we read anything into Israeli silence at this point?
So this is kind of Israel's trademark, Hallie, especially with these high-profile assassinations, covert operations carried out overseas. They tend to kind of let the killing, let the explosions do the talking. They try not to gloat about it because they feel that that is more likely to provoke a response from Hezbollah. Hezbollah is saying it's very clear in its own minds that Israel's responsible. They are saying that they will retaliate. Earlier tonight, Israel's top generals all got together not far from here to plan a defense strategy. And I can tell you, Hallie, here in Israel tonight, there are a lot of people who are marveling at what appears to be the ingenuity of their intelligence services, and at the same time are very, very nervous about what comes next. Hallie?
Raf Sanchez, live for us in Tel Aviv. Raf, thank you. Back here at home tonight, the Carolinas are dealing with the aftermath of a huge rainstorm, one that we showed you as breaking news last night on this show. It's a 1 in 1,000-year storm that really slammed this whole area, dumping something like 15 inches of rain in just 12 hours right along the Carolina coast. Washed out roads. You had to have emergency water rescue teams get out there. Look at this, that bus trying to get through some of that water there. It looks like it was able to be successful in that instance. Several people had to be rescued from cars that were flooded, from homes. Puppies had to be rescued. You saw that dog there. Marissa Parra is joining us now from North Carolina. People are just now getting a chance to get in and try to see what's going on. But as you've laid out here, boy, what a difference 24 hours makes, right?
Exactly, Hallie. I mean, here in Charlotte was spared from the worst of this. But just to give you an example, this is Little Sugar Creek right next to me. You can see it is gently flowing as people are used to seeing it. But in this video that you're about to see in a moment, this is what it looked like yesterday, just for a little comparison. And this isn't even the hardest hit part of North Carolina, Hallie. We saw those images coming from the coast of Carolina, particularly Carolina Beach. This is an example of a place that saw over 15 inches of rain in less than 12 hours. And we're talking about some intense rainfall totals that these places in North Carolina have not seen maybe in well, we don't know how many decades, but were historic rainfall totals that caused, cars to stall out. We saw feet of water we saw maybe hundreds of cars stranded on Highway 17. We saw parts of roadways completely washed away. And of course, you mentioned all of those rescues, Hallie. So when we talk about what people were and were not expecting, they were expecting rain. Of course, forecasters were telling them rain was coming, but a lot of people were saying, as you're about to hear, they didn't expect it to be this bad. Take a listen. And apparently, we do not have this sound that we showed you in the 5 o'clock hour just an hour ago, Hallie. So to summarize, they did not expect as much rain as we got. But I will just end with this, Hallie. We know that this was not a hurricane. This was not a tropical storm. It had no name, but this is a good reminder. It doesn't take a named storm to cause a lot of damage, as you're seeing on the screen there, Hallie. So a lot of cleanup still to be done, even though the rain's done here.
Marissa, I know you're learning more, too, about the climate connection here, right?
Yes. So a couple things here. One, a couple people were talking about how we feel like we keep hearing once in a 1,000-year rainfall event. And so I talked to the climate team about that and asked if there was a climate change connection here. And so a couple of things. With a warmer atmosphere, the atmosphere is able to hold more water. And so we are seeing more intense rainfall events because of climate change. And so that is something that, one, I thought was interesting to note and pick up on. But two, it's also important to note that even though we had this no-name storm, which we just talked about, can still pack a punch, we're still in hurricane season. So it's not time to drop the guard yet. Hurricane season technically lasts through November, through the end of November. And so as we've seen, Hallie, we can still see some very intense storms later in the year. Hallie?
Yeah, folks definitely needing to stay vigilant there and in a lot of that region. Marissa Parra, thank you so much. We are just, I gotta lay out some of the drama here because there's going to be some drama tomorrow as it relates to the Fed and this question that has been on the minds of economists, maybe you, if you're looking to borrow money anytime soon. If a rate cut is coming tomorrow, how big will it be? That's the mystery. And the Fed is deciding it in a meeting tonight ahead of a big announcement that's expected tomorrow. This is a move that could make it cheaper for you to maybe get a new mortgage or a new auto loan, could affect your credit card rate. All of it is in pursuit of this big goal now for a so-called soft landing. This is where the Fed hopes they can bring down high inflation without driving the country into a recession. And right now, the economy is kind of signaling, hey, maybe we're ready for a rate cut. Look at this chart. Inflation is now the lowest it's been since 2021 when it started to spike. And you look at gas prices, they're down something like 17%, as you see here, over the last year. Christine Romans is joining us now. Christine, here's what of the many millions of things I love about you, here's one of them. That you put it into normal human person terms, right? Because I think people want to know, a Fed talk, great, love it. What does it mean for my money if they do end up cutting rates? What are the practical implications of this?
Yeah, the high drama, what happens at that big stone building that you were showing matters to the kitchen table for millions of Americans. And here's why. A really important shift in the Fed's stance here. It has kept interest rates at 20-something-year highs for months and months and months now. When it cuts those rates, it's going to further drive down mortgage rates. It will begin, it won't happen right away, but eventually you'll see credit card interest rates and car loan interest rates start to decline. So that's really important for anybody who borrows money. It's also important for companies that borrow money. It gives them more breathing space maybe to hire and invest in other places. So lowering interest rates here in an economy that is still solid, that's something that hopefully will be good news for everyone.
So what is the expectation for what they will do? Like, is it pretty baked in? They're probably going to cut. Could Jay Powell come out and surprise us all and say we're not? Like, what do you think?
You know, he's not a big fan of surprises, I'm going to be honest. But there are a lot of signals in the market that they would like to see a 50 basis point. You know, here's the thing, though. You usually only go big with 50 if something really bad is happening, right? A terrorist attack, a recession, you know, a COVID wave, a financial crisis. So it would be really out of the ordinary to do 50. But given how much they have hiked these rates and kept them up here for so long, you know, maybe that's in the cards. Okay. I haven't really seen such a toss-up in a really long time. 25 basis points would be kind of on par for Jay Powell. No big surprises. Maybe he has a really what they call dovish statement saying we're going to keep cutting, and that'll be make everybody happy. But whatever happens, there'll be a rate cut tomorrow.
And it's going to be fascinating, and you're going to be all over it. And it's also all happening, not just big news for like kitchen tables and the big stone building and everything else, but also for the other building, you know, that's down there on Pennsylvania Avenue, and that is the White House. Yeah. Yeah, you know, there is a political backdrop to this. And as I have you here, as we talk about the economy, I was so fascinated to see former President Trump today posting online that he would like to get SALT back, right? This is the state and local tax deduction. It can cut back how much federal income tax you owe. I happen to be old enough to remember because I lived it when I covered the White House, when it was Donald Trump himself as president who implemented, in fact, that cap on SALT. It would be a reversal if he now backs this position, as he says he does. Christine, what are the political and realistic implications of this?
Well, it's interesting. He's heading to Nassau, New York tomorrow for a rally. So where is the place where people would benefit really the most from putting the SALT back? It would be places like New York State, Connecticut, high-tax blue states where maybe Donald Trump is trying to peel off some votes. It would also add to the deficit, and it would, of course, take Congress to do it. So it's a big fight. But a reversal that is getting a lot of attention in some of these big blue states where people really saw their taxes go up with the president's tax cuts because they got rid of that SALT deduction or capped it at $10,000.
That's right. Christine Romans, thank you. Appreciate you. We'll talk tomorrow. I know. Consider yourself booked for the show, let me tell you.
That's a hard booking.
Coming up here on the show. Thanks, Christine. Some bombshell testimony painting a very scary picture of the doomed Titan submersible mission. The too late red flags we're just now learning about. Some bombshell testimony tonight in an ongoing hearing into OceanGate, with a former employee saying the company's CEO ignored safety concerns and rushed the production of the doomed Titan sub. Remember the one that imploded on its way to see the wreck of the Titanic? This former worker says that the boss flew off the handle when questioned. All of this is coming out on the second day of a huge Coast Guard hearing on that sub's implosion. Deadly, of course, killing 5 people, including the CEO, Stockton Rush. I want you to listen to this moment, right? So this is the employee talking about what happened after Rush got a submersible stuck in a wreck on a dive years earlier and then refused to let him take control. Listen to this.
Eventually, it took one of the paying clients to turn round. She shouted at Stockton to give me the effing controller. He reached round behind him. I had my head up inside the tower, so I'm still looking at the wreck, and he clattered it off the right side of my head. And I picked it up, repaired it, and had us out 10, 15 minutes.
Tom Costello is joining us now. That is one of like multiple moments that I think would make your jaw drop in this hearing today. Yeah. And I understand this person eventually went on to be kind of a whistleblower against OceanGate, right?
His name is David Lockridge. He is the former operations manager at OceanGate. You can tell from the accent, he is quite Scottish. He was hired to be an expert, a submersible expert for OceanGate. But he started saying, listen, this is not ready for prime time. This submersible, the skin could easily fracture and cause the whole thing to implode. He said it is dangerous. Other engineers were saying this is dangerous. He said he personally wouldn't get in the submersible. When he tried to flag it to Stockton Rush, they fired him. And then he went to OSHA and he said, listen, I've got a serious concern here. I've just been fired, but I want to do a whistleblower complaint here. He said, but OSHA never followed up. And had they followed up, he said, they might have saved some lives. But here's David Lockledge talking about what happened when he went to OSHA and then he got some threatening letters from OceanGate.
They were basically demanding that I pay them money. They state that if I don't, they will contact previous employers, ex-spouses. OceanGate will contact US Immigration. Fraud, theft, everything's in this.
Yeah, so he's reading there from what he claims are threatening letters from OceanGate, and he says, boy, if only they'd listen, if only OceanGate had listened, if only OSHA had listened, maybe lives would have been saved.
He also describes stuff as being done on the cheap, kind of MacGyvered, if you will.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, and they showed photos which are just astonishing here because he said, listen, you know, on the inside, what are you looking at?
Wait, what are we looking at here?
Pieces that came from Home Depot.
Wow.
Quite literally for this submersible that they're charging people $250,000 to go down into the ocean on. Are you kidding me? And literally, there's a plastic tub from Home Depot. They've got some sort of a bladder that they were also using as an inflatable to help give ballast when necessary to come back up again. They got huge pipes that were used to literally drop weight. This is not a high quality, high engineering type of environment whatsoever.
So there's this hearing. There's some of the lawsuits, of course, that have been filed against OceanGate. But OceanGate doesn't really exist anymore, right? I mean, it kind of dissolved, I guess, after this implosion. I assume is there a lawyer or who is responding to sort of refute any of this, or is nobody responding?
Nobody's really refuting. OceanGate does have a lawyer there. It's not at all clear what entity still exists, right? Because they were pretty much wiped out. The CEO's gone. Yeah. Wiped out with this disaster. Maybe they've got some money left in the bank, and that's why the attorney's there. We really don't know.
Okay. Tom Costello, what's next on this? I mean, this is going to go on for, we think, 2 weeks?
Another 10 days or so. Tomorrow is an off day. They'll be back at it again on Thursday. Lots of engineers, lots of Coast Guard investigators and officers, and a lot of expertise being brought to the fore on this.
All right, Tom Costello, we'll see you back here, by the way, tomorrow night. I know you're sitting in on the show. Thank you very much in advance for
Looking
doing
forward
that.
to
Appreciate it. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, Russia's president ordering the country's army to get about 200,000 troops bigger, 1.5 million servicemen in all. That would make it the second biggest army in the world after China's. The Kremlin says this move is a result, they say, of growing threats on Russia's western borders. Number 2, the Miami Dolphins putting its quarterback on the injured reserve list. We're talking, of course, about Tua Tagovailoa, who's going to miss at least 4 games. Remember, he's been in the news big time. He's recovering from that concussion he got during a game against Buffalo last week. Number 3, the NYPD says it cannot find the knife at the center of a chaotic subway shooting in Brooklyn. Police shot at a man who allegedly did not pay the fare. After they say he charged at officers with that knife, NYPD opened fire. They hit the suspect, 2 innocent bystanders, and a police officer. Officials are now looking for somebody else who they think may have swiped the suspect's knife from the scene. Number 4, wild scene out of a debate for mayor of Sao Paulo, Brazil. Look at this. One candidate, a TV presenter, picks up a chair. Did you catch that? Chucks it at the other one. Look at this. Who's a far-right influencer. It all apparently happened after the influencer said the presenter was not man enough to hit him. The presenter got expelled from the debate. The victim got a bruised rib, according to his spokesperson. Number 5, air quality warning now out for parts of Texas today after that big pipeline fire we told you about. It is still burning, but it's expected to go out by itself eventually. Officials say they've now got a better sense of what started the fire, that it happened after a car drove through a fence and hit a valve on the pipeline. That's what triggered the explosion. Just a few hours ago, the FDA out with a big announcement. It will let a promising drug used to treat breast cancer be used on even earlier stages of the disease. And that's a big deal because now tens of thousands of women could have access to a drug that not only treats cancer, but lowers the risk of it coming back. NBC's Kathy Park has more.
At 36 years old, Nikki Odom began the fight of her life.
It wasn't a lump, it wasn't a bump. I just thought, okay, something is off.
It was ultimately diagnosed as breast cancer, setting off a grueling treatment plan of surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation.
What motivated you to keep going? and fighting?
My kids, my life, my husband. I wanted to be here.
Doctors told her about a clinical trial for a drug approved 7 years ago, but now being tested to prevent recurrence in early breast cancer cases like hers.
It was a no-brainer for me. I was like, game on, let's do it.
Today, that drug, Kisqali, received expanded FDA approval for the most common form of early breast cancer, defined as disease that has not spread beyond the breast and lymph nodes.
This is a huge number of patients who could potentially get this drug.
Kisqali is a daily pill taken for 3 years that works by stopping new cancer cells from growing. It's promising news, especially for those diagnosed under the age of 45, who make up roughly 10% of all new cases.
They have more aggressive disease. These may be the exact patients that Kisqali would be really helpful for. And they have a long time to live, so we really do want to minimize their risk of recurrence.
6 years later, Nikki is cancer-free.
Going through something like this, you really aren't alone. You have so much support around you. You just have to embrace it.
Kathy Park, NBC News, Nashville.
Coming up later in the show, new dramatic video showing folks in Atlanta dropping in to commit a robbery, how they pulled it off, and hear why Miley Cyrus is being accused of ripping off Bruno Mars for one of her biggest hits. We're breaking down the latest music legal beef next. One of the world's biggest pop stars is now facing a new lawsuit accusing her of stealing her award-winning song from another one of the world's biggest pop stars. We're talking about Miley Cyrus and Bruno Mars. Miley's song Flowers and Bruno's song When I Was Your Man. I know you know them both. I want you to listen to both of them. You be the judge. Listen to this.
I can buy myself flowers, write my name in the sand. I should have bought you flowers and held your hand.
Okay. To be clear, so very interesting, right? I don't know. You tell me what you think. But to be clear, it's not Bruno Mars suing Miley. It's actually the company he sold his song to that is now suing Miley Cyrus. And let us be clear here. Flowers is like one of the biggest songs ever. We're talking 2 Grammys, including Record of the Year. 8 weeks on top of the Billboard Hot 100, nearly 3 billion streams. It was the best-selling single of last year. I know you've heard it. Court documents we're getting that allege, I want to read them to you, quote, any fan of Bruno Mars knows Miley's song did not achieve all that success on its own. We are out to reps from both Miley and Bruno. We have not heard back. Yasmin Vasugian is all over this. Like this has happened. This is not the first time that an artist or a company has sued another artist or a company about a song. But walk us through the specifics here. Again, not Bruno Mars, but the company he sold the song to. What do they say Miley Cyrus did? How do they say she stole it, just heard it and did it, or what? How much do they want?
By the way, I'd like to be introduced now as Yasmin Vasugian, NBC News Now top music correspondent from here on out after doing this segment, Hallie. And what I have now learned about Flowers.
Tell me everything.
When I was your man. I am living out my dreams as an MTV VJ here. So it's actually Tempo Music Investments, by the way. That is the company that bought a share of Bruno Mars's kind of catalog of music, which is, by the way, something that is fairly common, right? It's a really lucrative thing to do, to sell your catalog of music. We're looking at numbers like 300, 400, 500, $500 million in which folks like Bruno Mars will sell their catalogs of music. They're alleging essentially that Miley Cyrus, quote unquote, intentionally copied Bruno Mars's work. Let me read for you some more from the court documents in addition, Hal, to what you read as well, saying undeniable, based on the combination number of similarities between the 2 recordings, that Flowers would not exist, going so far as to say it would not exist without When I Was Your Man. I mean, these are the sorts of things, Hal, as I was kind of looking into this reporting, that has happened quite often between artists, especially artists that have sold off their catalogs and or maybe the estates of now deceased artists, happening with current artists as well. But nonetheless, I mean, it's happened before and it's happening now, and it's major.
But It's happened to Miley before,
It has.
right?
Yeah, fourth time this has happened. By the way, 2 times in 2018, once in 2022. In 2018, by the way, it was Michael May saying her song "We Can't Stop" was similar to lyrics from a 1988 track of his that was called "We Run Things." Settled out of court. Look at that, $300 million. There was a suit that was dropped in 2018 as well from the song 23, in which she was a collaborator on, and then in 2022 as well, a photo that she posted saying she didn't own the rights to that photo. The photographer said that. That was also settled as well. So this is the 4th time in which this has actually happened to Miley Cyrus.
There's some collateral damage here too, right? Because Bruno Mars is not suing anybody here, but he, of course, he is the face of his own song, and it shines this sort of interesting light on the risks that stars can take when they sell their catalogs, because in some ways they lose control of their own art in a way.
That's exactly right. They lose control. But again, it's incredibly lucrative. It happens all the time. Take a look at some of the biggest stars that have sold out their catalogs: Bruce Springsteen, Paul Simon, and Justin Bieber. It happens all the time. But again, it is one of the big risks that they are running in doing that.
Yasmin Vasugian, our, what did you say? Our
top
chief
music news
MTV, VMA, VJ correspondent, all of it. Okay. Appreciate you. Thanks, Yas.
Thanks, Hal.
NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day, and because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. Out of our Southern Bureau, a Florida sheriff releasing a mugshot and a perp walk of an 11-year-old charged with threatening a mass shooting. We are not showing his face or naming him because he's a minor. Officials say this boy collected weapons, some fake, some real, and a written list of people. He allegedly told deputies the threat was a joke. The sheriff says he will do the same thing to other kids arrested for similar threats, to effectively publicly try to shame them and their parents. Also out of our Southern Bureau, new video out of the Atlanta Police Department showing a pretty dramatic robbery. Look at this. The suspects apparently dropped in through the ceiling. You see them. They go down in there like the tiles are fallen. This is a cash checking business. Officials say they used power tools to cut a hole in the roof. That's how they got in, and then allegedly stole more than $150,000. Police are still looking for them. Out of our Midwest Bureau, Michael Jordan's suburban Chicago mansion is finally getting sold. It is finally under contract after about a decade of being on the market. That is a long time. 56,000 square feet. That's not small. It was listed for about $15 million. We don't know the final price, if it was more than that, less than that, whatever. The house has a basketball gym, Natch, infinity pool, tennis court, cigar room, 19 bathrooms, and the property taxes alone are about $150,000 a year. Still to come. Instagram says it's rolling out some new features to protect its youngest users. Question is, can a teen who's good at tech get around it all? Instagram tonight rolling out a whole new approach to accounts for teenagers after years of more and more pressure to try to make Insta safer for teens. Over the next few weeks, here's the deal. Here's what's changing. Accounts of people younger than 18 will automatically be shifted to private. It means that these people are going to have to approve followers, they're going to have restrictions on screen time, and their parents are going to be allowed to see who they're messaging. Julia Borston has more. Walk us through the new features, but importantly, if you take a step like sort of in the process before that, how is Instagram going to know if a teenager types in, 16 or 21?
Well, look, this will be much easier for Instagram to do this rollout with teens who admit they're teens, who admit they're under 18 years old and are honest about their age. But they are going to be using AI features to try to identify teens who may have lied about their age and put in an adult birth date, so they could ask for ID or things like that to verify whether these teens are actually adults or whether they're just lying. But the idea here is that they want to make these default settings for teens. So this includes automatic protections, private accounts. What they're going to be doing is shifting all of these teen accounts to private. You have to opt to make them public. They're filtering out inappropriate language and suggestive content. And they are also putting limits on screen time. So between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., you won't be getting alerts if you are a teen. Now, Instagram says they've developed all of these features for their Instagram teen accounts after working with parents and various organizations to make sure they're doing what's best for teens and also what parents want.
It's also, it's not like this pressure from parents groups, from people here I am on Capitol Hill is brand new, right? There have been these calls to make social media safer for teenagers online for years. Can you talk through the timing piece of this? Why is Meta rolling this out now?
Well, it seems like Meta has definitely been working on this for a while, and they've certainly invested quite a bit in trying to figure out what these features should be. But there is no doubt, Hallie, that the heat is turning up on Instagram and other social media platforms. There's a bill that's been working its way through Congress that's called the COSA bill. This is the Kids Online Safety Act, and it's been working its way through. And there's a question of whether it'll ever get approved, but a bipartisan support for this bill. And then the Surgeon General just issued a call to label social media as dangerous, kind of like a cigarette label, but for social media. And then there's support by over 40 different state attorneys general for that move. Hallie.
Julia Borston over at CNBC. Julia, great to have you on. Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.